Hello, and welcome to the Journal Star Sportswriters podcast.
Hello.
I'm your host, Adam Duvall, alongside Stan Morris, small school football beat writer, sports editor Wes Huett. We're recapping Week 6 and looking ahead to Week 7. So we can start off in the Middle Illini.
Two of the best teams in the state, in my opinion. I'm amazed, continue to be amazed by how good Washington and Metamora are. They just, I don't know, we were talking about it before the podcast. I honestly think those are two teams that could compete for state titles. And it's, incredible. Washington just continues to run the ball, controls the line of scrimmage. Metamora finds ways to be balanced and run the ball or throw the ball and do what they have to do, give up some points. But I think that has to do with Morton being a pretty good offensive team. But, just two more good performances, and I think we're just counting down the days until next Friday when those two meet, because that's going to really decide. I mean, that will decide the championship of this league. So, and plus, just determine how good both these teams truly are.
I think the biggest key for both of these teams lies within the quarterback, and I mean that's kind of obvious. I mean, Caleb Fisher and Tommy Hall.
Yeah, I think we've alluded to it on this podcast before, having 2 or 3 year starters at quarterback.
Right.
It just puts you so much further ahead than other people in the league. And Morton's showing that too. They have a guy who's back, and even Dunlap has a guy who's has some success as well. So, like, the best teams have veteran leadership at quarterback. That's not a coincidence.
Regarding Metamora's defense, is it more of a product of a good offense from Morton, or is the defense?
I think in this case it was. Metamora, they put some of their best athletes on the defensive line, so I don't. It's a situation where I don't think they're necessarily suspect on defense, but certainly a little better on offense than they are on defense. But yeah, I think we'll find out. We'll definitely find out next week, because they're going to get a huge test with Washington. But Pekin, I think, even might. We'll find out a little bit about them this week. Pekin's 2-4, but they've played the big boys already. So they played the Dunlaps and the Washingtons, and so I think Pekin can do a little offense enough to kind of find out what Metamora is on defense.
Stan, we'll flip over to the small schools. You saw Eureka, El Paso.
I did, yeah.
Hornets 5-1 now, playoff eligible.
Yeah, it's won 4 in a row.
Yeah, what did you see from Eureka?
Yeah. Just real steady. Steady on the offensive side of the ball, and defense. They keep kind of improving, each and every week. I've talked about it before. They've got some young guys playing on both sides of the ball there and gaining that confidence there. They've got a sophomore quarterback who can do both things. I mean, he can throw the ball, he can run the ball in situations, and so they've got some options there. And he's done a very good job of kind of running that offense, even as a first year, starter as a sophomore. And they did good as far as this past Friday night. They had Ryan Falk. We've talked about him from El Paso Gridley, over almost 1,000 yards going into that game. They did a good job of keeping him in check. You're not really going to hold somebody like that really down completely. They held him down to like less than 50 yards in the first half, and only one double-digit gain in there, and really he ended up getting at like 140 yards, but 47 of those were after it was 35-0. So he did get a 76-yard touchdown pass, but that again was like 2 minutes left to go in the game. The game was already decided at that point. But their defense continues to be strong. I mean, you take out a Gibson City game where Gibson City, Melvin Sibley is just blowing everybody away by scoring 40 points against everybody, and they're only allowing about 14 points a game on the defensive side of the ball, so they're playoff eligible now, and that's and they can go kind of clinch that spot this weekend too. So they continue to look really good.
And I want to echo what Wes said a few weeks ago regarding Eureka. It just seems like when Eureka football is playing well, I mean, I'm going to age myself, but Nick Eaton being the quarterback.
Eaton.
About 12, 13 years ago when
Another Eureka name.
Yeah, and they went 5-4 and made the playoffs, and I like their fit in the HOI. I really do.
Yeah, it's a great fit for them, really.
Yeah, and we have a game coming up. I mean, we'll talk about it a little later, but the game against Tremont coming up this week. Again, we podcast favorite Tremont, but and Eureka too. Both of them, kind of our darlings, gonna face off here against each other. We just, I feel like it's two programs starting to turn a corner.
Two other games in the Middle Illini. Limestone won 2 in a row after dropping 19 in a row. They beat Canton 39-12. Gerald Cummings 141 rushing, 3 touchdowns, 2 forced fumbles. Dunlap back on the winning ways.
Yeah, interesting. And they face off this week.
Yeah,
that's an interesting game. I mean, obviously, I like Dunlap in it just because of the experience. But I think if I'm in the Limestone practices this week, this is a game that they probably feel like the way they're playing, they can go in and win. And Dunlap is kind of licking its wounds a little bit. They got back on the winning ways, but to basically to beat a East Peoria team by 12 that you feel like they probably should have handled a little easier. This could be interesting. I see a high-scoring game. I think Dunlap will end up doing enough to win it, but it could be interesting. I think these teams are going to kind of define who they are this week.
And it was all Peoria matchup in Week 6. Peoria High 58, Richwoods 14. We'll talk about Cam Ford in a minute, but Wes, you've covered enough Tim Thornton teams to know what they play, and sometimes it's just turn the ball over to the offense and let them outscore the other guy. But
because
this week they allowed 104 total yards.
Right, and they can do that, and I think they play a high gamble type of defense. I mean, obviously they're trying some different things. I mean, they lost Adam O'Neill as their defensive coordinator because he went on to another school, and then now, so obviously they don't have the exact same schemes they had before. But I know Tim Thornton likes to create turnovers. He likes to flow to the ball. He likes to be aggressive, and obviously when sort of like when you spin the wheel and you hit sevens a lot, you're going to do that and hold a team to 100 points. But you can give up big plays. That's why you sometimes see some of the scores that they have. They'll risk a big play to get us a turnover because it gets their team the ball back. But when things are hitting right, they can shut down teams. Interesting. I remember back in the day, Thornton's Woodruff teams when they'd outscore people one week, and then the next week they'd. Yeah, I think they played a Quincy Notre Dame game where it was like 50-50 plus in overtime. Then the next week they lost to Richwood 7-6. So they do what they need to do, basically. Right. Like if they feel like they can score on somebody, then they might be a little more active and aggressive. They feel like they have trouble scoring, then they'll lock it down. So it's an interesting, again, with Thornton, like we've talked about before, he just does what it takes. He's not jamming square pegs in round holes. He's going to find out what he needs to do to win a game.
And he has a perfectly capable backup, Cam Ford, who's filled in for Gabe Hernandez, who's been out with an injury. 2 rushing touchdowns, a passing TD. I mean, Thornton seems to always, he always does it with quarterbacks.
Well, he respects his kids, and they know that he's there for them, and then they give everything for him. And it's a relationship that just even guys who are second and third on the depth charts or might only. Because I remember back when they were struggling at Woodruff at 0-9, he still would be playing one-way players because he just wants to get more kids involved in the program. Even if he might give up something in the short term, he knows in the long term getting more kids involved with the program is going to lead to bigger things down the road. And, again, having a backup quarterback who can step in and do that are those types of things. That's when those things pay off.
The other all Peoria matchup, Notre Dame 42, Manual nothing. Irish now on a 4-game win streak. Pat Armstrong has that team playing well. A pair of 100-yard backs. So it'll be interesting to see. And we were talking before the podcast, Notre Dame potentially, and in the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, be in 6A, which would be.
Yeah, they're right on the border right now. They're the biggest team in 5A currently. And if they do slip down to 5A, they could do some damage. Yeah, that's an interesting team because they have a game against winless Lockport left, so I think they're going to get in the tournament. It's just a matter of they have a couple of games. They have Bloomington and Danville, which are both winnable too. So this team can be anywhere between 7-2 and 5-4. And again, they get to 7-2 and drop to 5A. That and the way they're splitting out with halves, they could get a nice draw.
Stan, you had 3 teams clinch playoff spots this week.
3 unbeaten still alive. Yeah, kind of rolling.
Yeah, Elmwood, Farmington, Princeville. Why don't you start us with Princeville?
Yeah, Princeville 27-0 over Mid County. Their defense has been really, just as good as it gets, really.
Yeah.
They've only allowed, no team has scored more than 1 touchdown against them. They've only allowed 27 points in 6 games. And, they about 100 yards is all they gave up total offense in this game against Mid-County, which has some athletes. Then Snedden, Adam Snedden, another good night running the ball, got, 3 touchdowns. And, I talk about them being, they coming into the season, they had 3 linebackers that they needed to find. They lost 3 to graduation there, and Justin Jansen, who's a all-conference defensive end, moved to middle linebacker, and then they got Kobe Craig, junior, and Carter Johnson, both juniors, came in and kind of filled the gaps, and they've done a great job of figuring out the reads and those kind of things, and making that really a solid defense. And Kobe Craig is a kid that missed all of last year, didn't even play last year because he was hurt. So it's just getting kind of the football legs back under him, and they've got a solid defensive back core too, and they lost a kid from injury and a defensive back, and so they've had to replace that too. But just solid. They've got a game coming up this weekend against Stark County, which is an interesting game because definitely. Stark County is one of those kind of traditional and rivalry type things, and of course a team that's playing for their playoff lives.
Right. Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But
Princeville on the other side of it. I'm taking a peek at the conference. They're only one of 5 unbeaten teams in 1A, which kind of makes it interesting from a statewide level that Princeville be in the mix to. They should be challenging for the title.
In the mix
in the mix for the title.
A 1 seed.
For 1 seed, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. And they look the part right now. That's what they had the goal going into the season, 9-0. 9-0. We want to go 9-0. So they're more than halfway there.
Yeah. And both Elmwood and Farmington kind of had tune-ups before the big week 7.
They did, getting ready for no letdowns and no really looking forward, too far ahead. And, Elmwood, 56-13 over Rushville Industry. Again, they did do what they do, run the ball over 300 yards rushing. Just solid. And Farmington again, Hayden Brott he only passed the ball 6 times, but 4 of those went for touchdowns. And so that's pretty good average.
That's a good percentage,
there. Yeah, another good night for Dash Anderson. So they kind of set up the big showdown for sure.
Close calls. You were at Havana Heights. What was it? 7-point game at halftime, and
it was a 7-point. It's kind of a crazy game right at the end of the half because it was 14-7. Havana was leading, and Heights stopped them on the 5-yard line, and then they just were like 3 minutes left to go in the half, and took it 95 yards into the end zone, tied the game at 14-14 with like 1 minute left to go before half, and Heights is feeling pretty good. But then Havana comes right back in that minute and scores a touchdown with like 7 seconds left before half, and then Havana just kind of took control of things as far as the second half goes, and Heights only had 10 plays in all the second half. One of those was a fumble on the first play, interception on the last play, and the other 4 were 4 downs and out, or four plays and out, and they only had, I think, 2 total yards in those 10 plays. So Havana getting that first win. But two teams that were looking for that first win.
Yeah, it came out winless on a Saturday afternoon, right? That was
Saturday afternoon game, homecoming game. Really nice, crisp day for it. And
yeah, I'm gonna use this to make a call out there. More Saturday afternoon games, please.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was one every week for a while, and then now teams just don't play them anymore.
No, they don't.
Especially
Unless it's a homecoming, maybe.
Right. Well, even homecoming games, I'm seeing more and more on Friday night. I don't.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's a reason for it. I know certain coaches like to play on Friday nights as opposed to Saturdays, just because of getting in the same routine, break routine.
You hear that, and you hear that about the first round of the playoffs. You want to be Friday, be the same routine. And
But you're
going to play Saturdays if you're going deep into the playoffs.
Right, and I think that sometimes even a game between two winless teams in the Heights has a playoff atmosphere at times, even just because it is a Saturday afternoon. And maybe it's the night owl in me of always working at night, and I never get to see these games, so put them on Saturday so I can. But it's just cool. It's such a cool atmosphere to step out, especially during the fall when it's crisp and the sun's out, but it's kind of chilly, and you need your sweatshirt and go out and watch a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially this time of year, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another close call. IVC beat Rantoul 35-34.
Yeah. Rantoul scored to go ahead, 34-28. I'm not sure how many minutes were left to go in the game, but they missed the extra point. How important is that, right? And actually, IVC fumbled the kickoff and gave it away, gave it right back to them, but their defense was able to stop them, and they got the ball back, and IVC was able to get a good drive together and had a really nice pass play from let's see. Merlot, to Camden Wallard, about a 40-yard pass play there that kind of got him in a position to score a touchdown, and Ethan Kemp got the touchdown, and Micah Schultz the extra point to get the win. So have
you seen, weren't they on the opposite side of one of these a couple weeks ago? Prairie Central? Did they lose
2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
St. Thomas
More. Yeah, that's right.
Same kind of deal. Yeah.
42-41 or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Tremont, they pulled out, 33-16. They were down 9-0.
Tremont did not have a game that went right down to the wire.
Right,
How about that? First time all year.
Corner turned. Here they come.
Yeah. They were down 9-0, then they reel off 33 unanswered points. Had the offense kind of rolling there, over 300, about 350 yards rushing. Caden Buster, a really nice night rushing. So it was good to see them get a game where there's not a nail biter for coach there. So
on to our Just One Thing segment. Stat, note, fact, or quote from week 6 that stood out to you. Stan, let's start with you.
I'm going to go with the Three Rivers, Mississippi. Big showdown there.
Going deep west.
Yeah.
Or north.
Monmouth Roseville getting a 24-20 win over Hall. Both those teams came in 4-1. Big showdown there in the conference. And Monmouth Roseville had a 24-8 lead at halftime and just kind of held on. 5 wins in a row for them, and they've kind of turned the corner, had a couple, rough years, and so now they're looking 5-1 and, playoff eligible. So congrats to them.
Wes, how about your Just One Thing?
Well, I'm going to more of a on the big picture thing is Washington and Peoria High obviously have been ranked in 5A all year, along with Metamora, but if the current playoff projections shake out, Washington and Peoria High are probably going to be in 6A, which just changes the dynamic quite a bit, and that would leave teams like Metamora and Morton down in 5A. And as I alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, I said that Washington and Metamora could both compete for state titles, and that's the reason why. I think both Metamora and Washington potentially could be in the mix to be there the final day in 5A and 6A, which would be quite a feat. I mean, last year we had our first all Mid-Atlantic semifinal in 5A, but like I said, I think Washington and Peoria High are going to jump up to 6, which makes things pretty interesting. And then Notre Dame, as we alluded to, is we're right on that border. And the playoffs are so weird. I mean, no one really knows. Well, not no one, I should say, but there are a few teams right on that border between the classes, and who gets in the playoffs determines where everybody goes. The the top 256, regardless of enrollment, they just basically find out who based on record first, and then it's the combined wins of your opponents, or no, your whole schedule. Excuse me, your whole schedule. Then they just pick the 256. Once that field's set, they split it into 8, and then based on enrollment, that's what class you're in. So, if more 5 and 4 teams are the smalls, or the more 6 and 3s, then it's going to push the field up, or vice versa. Like there was a year when Metamora fell to 4A back when they won their title, or the second 09 when they won their second title in 3 years. That it was like going into the last day of the season, it was determining whether or not they went to 4 or 5A based on a couple of 7A teams were playing and a couple of 2A teams were playing at 4 and 4 each, and the one who's smaller wins, and it's just almost luck sometimes as whether or not how they fall. But
and with the current setup with the success factor, the schools that petition to play up, Chicago Phillips, who will be in 6A.
Yeah, I don't envy the IHSA, man. They got to pull out their slide when they kind of do it themselves, to be honest. But with the success factor and the multiplier, and you need a slide rule and a computer program to figure out where everybody's at. It's kind of. But Steve Soucia up at the Joliet Herald News does a good job of doing that work for us, I guess. He takes pride in breaking down those projections and every week and seeing who's falling where and who's playing who. I think 37 playoff points right now, I think, is his number when it comes to who's in and who's out. So
the Joe Lenardi of high school football.
That's right.
Just one thing, Zach Jurgensen, North Fulton running back.
Huge game.
409 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, plus a 50-yard pick six, and a 48-24 win over South Fulton. And he is also my girlfriend's cousin. But
sure, not bad for a quarterback too.
Oh, he's a quarterback. Oh, he's a quarterback. He's not a running back. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, geez. Yeah.
Come on, your cousin.
Or, make that correction.
Yeah,
So, looking ahead to
he's blushing, everybody.
Week
Adam
7.
Duvall's blushing.
Doing a little planning preview. Stan, we're of course going to start with you. Elmwood at Farmington.
Yeah, their rivalry continues. I mean, it's, the game. It's been that way for the last few years. I mean, third year in a row, they're 6-0 ranked going into it. So the communities get into it, and everybody gets into that game, and it's going to be fun. We'll see what happens. Farmington's won. They won last year. They won. Actually, Elmwood was winning 12-0 in that game last year, and then. They kind of shut down the passing game of Farmington, but Farmington went to the run, and Hayden Brott had a big game running the ball, and Farmington was able to win that one 28-12 last year. But we get two different teams. You got the spread offense of Farmington, who can throw the ball all over the place, and they've got Dash Anderson, as we talked to, the running backs who they can give the ball to and look for some big yards. They're the big play type team, and whereas Elmwood is that steady. We're gonna kind of just grind things out and get 4, 5, 6 yards at a time and try to stop us. So, but they do have the potential to throw with Charlie McKenty. He's thrown for over 200 yards in one game this year. So they have that ability, but that they're gonna just run until you decide. If you can't stop it, they're going to keep on going. So, yeah, it just should be fun to see what happens. And I think, both coaches are certainly looking forward to that. And they think, that it may be defense that wins the game on this one. Again, both of them have really good defenses. We talk about their offenses because they're scoring 40 and 50 points a game. But Elmwood's got a strong, front seven in that the defensive side of the ball, and same with Farmington. They showed that they can do things defensively, and this is a game that certainly could come down to what happens on the defensive side of the ball, and that line play. It's kind of a cliche, but line is going to play a big factor in what happens in this.
Well, I think it comes down to who can adjust too. I mean, because of that,
right?
I mean, the defense that steps up, can the other team then?
That's what Farmington.
Can McGinty then throw it a little bit? Can Bratt then throw it a little bit? It's like kind of a chess game there.
Right. Absolutely.
Will this game be in the 20s?
I think it's going to be in the 20s. Yeah, I don't see it being the 77-64 that they got into, a few years ago.
Yeah,
they both have some pretty solid defensive fronts there that can keep this game down. So I think we're going to be in the 20s.
All right, moving on to the Big 12. Normal West at Manual, Peoria High at Champaign Central, Notre Dame at Bloomington, Urbana at Richwoods. Wes, I think you touched on it. The Notre Dame at Bloomington, that's a winnable game for the Irish.
Oh, right. I think all three of their games remaining are winnable. Like you said, that they have that range of – it's a hot team. I think they're starting to find their groove a little bit under a new coach. Nice, stable backfield, playing some defense. Obviously, it's and Peoria High is kind of in that same boat. I think they're both similar type of – they're both in similar spots right now. I mean, Notre Dame's schedule's a little easier just because they have the one non-con against winless Lockport next week. But Peoria High's got Champaign Central, Bloomington, Normal Community. I mean, those teams are combined 13-5, so Peoria High is certainly not assured a playoff spot yet, even sitting at 4-2. So they're going to have to win at least one of these. I mean, I think Big 12 5 wins will get you in. It's just a matter of, obviously they don't want to sit and wait, so they're going to want to win two of those three. That's a tough task, especially if Gabe Hernandez is out for an extended period of time and have to rely on a sophomore quarterback. But yeah, it's worth watching those two teams from here on out because they're going to kind of define their seasons here in the last few weeks.
Does Richwoods need a win pretty bad?
Yeah, they do. That's kind of lost in all of this. I mean, I think they have a shot this week against a winless Urbana team, and sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, turn a corner and get a win and get some kids buying back into what you're doing, and because Richwoods kind of is that way. It's such a tradition-laden program that you kind of just give yourself over to them, and when you're losing, that's tough to do. And when you get some wins and you start to see some success, that always helps.
We'll come back to the Middle Illini. Stan, there's 5 small school games. Why don't you start us off with, I'm going to play favorites. Eureka at Tremont.
Eureka at Tremont, yeah. No, that's a good.
Who are those teams again? We don't talk about them at all.
An HOI crossover game, both teams are really, Tremont comes into it winning the last 2 games. They've been in every game. They could be 6-0. The ground game is really starting to come together. They've got things moving in the right direction. Eureka again is in the same boat. I mean, everything's kind of moving in the right direction. They're won their last 4 games. Their offense is scoring close to 40 points a game in those wins. They showed that they can do things on the defensive side of the ball too. So, boy, that should be an interesting game to see what happens there.
And then you kind of touched, we were talking about Starr County, Princeville. That's kind of a natural rival there. And, 2 teams that have, had a fair amount of success in the Lincoln Trail the last few years. I know
right.
Starr County made a title game.
Made it to a title game a few years ago. They've been, traditional powerhouse. They've been 5-4 the last couple of years. Just barely made it to playoffs. Last year they got 22. They have the longest streak in the area as far as making it into the playoffs. So they're going to be
in danger of being ended.
It is because they're at 3-3 right now. So and I don't know if 5-4 will get them in this year either. So they're certainly going to be playing for that. I mean, right now they're projected. IHSA playoff outlook has them 33rd. They've got 28 playoff points, and 32 get in. So they're obviously right on the bubble there. So, and Princeville is a matter of can they handle that big line that Stark has, and again show that defense, and then keep Stark County from making those long drives and that kind of thing. So.
We have West Prairie at the Heights. We have St. Joe's at IVC. Fisher at DMAC. DMAC needs a win.
DMAC needs a win because they're facing Tri-Valley and Gibson City, Melvin Sibley in weeks 8 and 9. So they've got to get this one to get even have a chance to, because I don't know if anybody can compete with GCMS right now. So it's a matter of just continuing.
And that comes down to basically they have to win the other two. Then I mean,
and Fisher has beaten Tri-Valley, so Tri-Valley is beatable.
Sure.
So they can see maybe if we get this one against Fisher, maybe we can get that one against Tri-Valley, and then we're sitting at 5 wins, and we should be able to make it. With their playoff points, they'll make it in at 5 and 4. But you got to get this one.
And then back to the Middle Illini West. Limestone at Dunlap, Canton at Washington, East Peoria at Morton, Metamora at Pekin. Is there any game in that slate that stands out to you, or is intriguing?
It's kind of an interesting way. The way this is shaken out, the top 4 are sort of not playing each other. They're playing the top 4 against the bottom 4. I touched on it earlier. I think that Limestone Dunlap game could be interesting. Two teams kind of going, I don't want to say opposite ways, but Limestone has an up arrow definitely after 2 wins, and Dunlap is kind of more of a product of their own schedule, having to play 2 of the 2 best teams in the league already. So I think Dunlap's a little better than we've seen them play, and I think they're pointing to this game as this is where we can turn the corner, because Dunlap's got Limestone Canton left in the next 2 weeks, and then they end with Morton. And Morton is in a similar boat. I mean, we talked earlier about how good Washington and Metamora are, and that kind of, by comparison, programs like Dunlap and Morton get overshadowed. But these are 2 really good programs, and they both can be 6 and 2 heading into the final week of the season when they play each other, which should be a great game. And both those teams, I think, can do some damage in the playoffs if they get the right setup and the right path. Especially if one of them's 7 and 2, you get to 7 and 2, you host a game or 2 in the playoffs, and you never know. So it'll be nice to see Morton and Dunlap kind of they don't have to play the big boys here for a couple weeks, and can kind of see where they're at and lick some wounds and set up for that big week 9 game.
Canton going to Washington, that's tough for them.
Yeah, Canton's been such a weird team. Get big wins over programs, and then get to tough losses, and kind of just try to find their identity. I think at this point, and they're gonna have a tough sled this Friday at Washington. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Again, they just kind of have to focus on what they do best, and not necessarily worry about the results. So.
Do you see in the Metamora-Pekin game maybe a similar score to the Metamora-Morton game?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I said Pekin can score some points. So, like I said earlier, Metamora will find out a little bit about his defense this week as well. But I don't think Metamora is going to have much trouble scoring on him. Canton scored on him. Most teams have been able to score on Pekin so far this year, and it's just a matter of them making enough stops themselves. So,
all right, we're moving on to picks. Last week, Metamora, Eureka, and Limestone were winners, so that makes me 6-0.
What?
Stan is 5-1. Wes is 4-2.
Limestone game.
I know, and I thought he was crazy, but then the score rolls in, and he's a genius.
So we'll start with Elmwood at Farmington, the big one.
The big one.
Stan, give us your pick first, and then why.
Yeah, boy, toss a coin. I think we're going to go Farmington, though. I mean, they've certainly shown so far. I mean, it's one of those things where you go with them until they get beat.
Yeah.
I mean, they've shown that they can. They're certainly on a roll right here, and so I'm going to go Farmington. It's at their place too, so that helps.
Wes, how about you?
I'm going to take Farmington too. They just seem a little more diverse, a little more able to sort of, like I said earlier, the chess. I think they have a little more in their toolkit. Went up against. I mean, Owen's a great team, but I feel like they might be a little more one-dimensional than Farmington is. So I think when they hit a brick wall, the teams will hit a wall at some point in this game, and whether or not who can kind of find a way to get around it. And I think Farmington might be better equipped for that. So
I agree with both. Yeah, I'm taking Farmington as well. Just too many offensive weapons and too much balance, both in the pass and the rush. We'll go Wes. Back to you. Notre Dame at Bloomington.
Mm-hmm. I like Notre Dame in this. They just feel like they have a mojo going for them. I mean, and honestly, Bloomington's a little similar. They've also kind of shown that they kind of shown a little bit of life after some struggles over the season. But like I said, the team that starts to find its identity, especially in high school, is such a dangerous thing because once you find, okay, these are the backs we can lean on. You lean on the Cover and the Shadows. We mentioned them last week. Plus, like I said, it's a big game for their playoff lives. So I like Notre Dame.
Stan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, like you've talked about. I mean, Notre Dame is really kind of on a roll here, right? Four wins in a row. I mean, both the teams have played Normal West, and I mean Notre Dame had a tough game against them, but that was week 1.
Right.
And you're a different team when you're week 1 as opposed to week 7 here. And I think Bloomington just lost like 3 points, I think, to Normal West. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Notre Dame, but
that sounded like you didn't want to.
Yeah, I was
Notre Dame.
Get that home team. And, but I'm going to go Notre Dame.
Yeah,
I'm going to go Notre Dame too. I have to agree with you. What you guys?
I want to interject here for this bonus game. If we should change the bonus game. We have something written there, but we don't say what it is. But
I'm up for changing it.
Eureka Tremont. How about that as the bonus game?
Eureka Tremont. Okay.
We've talked so much about it. There are guys.
Yeah.
Right.
And we also this week we're going to be dispatching Adam Duvall to Tremont. We're going to be covering 2 area games this week.
Games, all right.
Just because of the way the schedule sort of shook out, and we have all the big 2s are either on the road or they're kind of playing games that maybe not as of a toss-up as you'd expect. So, and we like that Tremont Eureka game. So,
okay, well, Stan,
let's do it.
Eureka Tremont.
You know what? Similar to what you guys talked about with Elmwood and Farmington, I think I'm going to go with Eureka because they have, they have kind of a diverse. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball, and they have a defense that can stop the run and get hats on the ball, or hats on a carrier like they've talked about too. And so, I'm going to say Eureka on the road gets the win. Goes to.
It's weird. My head's saying Eureka, but I'm 2 games behind Duvie, so I might. And I like Zach and I like Tremont. I'm going with Tremont.
Hey, they are on a roll.
They're on a roll.
Yeah.
Corner turned, as I said before, but
going with the Turks. Okay. I'm going to go Eureka.
Good. I'm catching you.
I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Martin, especially everything that you've said about him and him being just a sophomore, correct?
Sophomore, yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see him. So, all right, our final segment. We have our PJ Star Fantasy Football. We just had one player that we did not have stats for, our Iowa recruit, but Wes Thomas Hall had 39.45 points. He had 167 passing with 2 touchdowns, 71 rushing, and 3 touchdowns. Adam Snedden, which all of us had 154 rushing and 3 touchdowns. John Gatton with 9 receiving yards. Stan, you had Hayden Brott, 168 passing with 4 touchdowns. That was good for 20.4. And then, of course, Adam Snedden. I had Caleb Fisher, who gave me 43.5. He had 92 pass and 2 touchdowns.
Nice night for him.
Yeah, 89 rush and 4 touchdowns on the ground. I had Adam Snedden. Blake Springer, 56 receiving yards and a touchdown. That's good for 11.6. I had 89.9 points. Wes, you had 74.15. And Stan, an incomplete 54.2.
I'm sure Meeman got me like 30-something.
Okay, yeah.
Probably.
Stan, let's start with you. Who's your quarterback for this week?
Well, based on last week, I'm going to go with Thomas Hall.
Chasing points. There we go.
Got to get some points. Yeah.
Okay. Wes, how about you? Who's your quarterback?
I'm going to go with Nolan Donald. I think they're going to have to kind of I've been scoring a lot so far this year on the wrong side of some of these tough matchups. I think they kind of get right, as they say, this week. So
I'm also going to go Thomas Hall. I'm expecting big things out of him. Stan, who's your running back this week?
I'm actually going to go back to Morton and go with Tag Gramp. How about that for
Tag Gramp?
Okay. Tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wes, who's your running back?
all right, I was going back and forth between Tag Gramp was one of them, but I'm going to go with Davion Allen from Peoria High. I think this is a game that they have to have, to be honest. And with quarterback situation and this is going to lean on the run game, I think, a little bit now. So give me the Peoria High guy.
I'm going to take Sam Walter from Washington. I was kind of saving him for a breakout week, and I think maybe them hosting Canton will do that. All right, last one. Wide receiver. Stan, who's your wide receiver this week?
I'm going with the Farmers and going with Blake Springer this time. I think
Blake Springer
might be a good outlet for Hayden Brott against that Elmwood defense. So we'll go with Blake.
Wes, how about you? Who's your wide receiver?
Give me the man with no points from last week, Meeman from Dunlap. I think Limestone's going to score some points this week against Dunlap, and they're going to have to score to keep up, I think. And that's a guy who can score some points, big boy from Dunlap.
I'm going to go with Henry Lampy from Elmwood.
He was my other guy. He was my other guy, but when he said the game was going to be in the 20s, and I'm like, oh, then it's touchdown dependent. Like, he has to score a touchdown to matter.
I think he can get one. Last few weeks, he's gotten at least one.
He was on my short list.
Maybe 3 or 4 catches. So yeah, I'm going Hank Lampy.
Nice.
All right. Coverage this week. Where are we at?
Well, we're going to send our David Minions and go out to Washington and watch the top team in 5A take on Canton. Johnny Campos will be at that Limestone Dunlap game, which I think is pretty interesting. Catch up with those teams, and we'll get a box score this week.
Absolutely.
From Dunlap. And then, as we said earlier, Adam will be at Eureka Tremont.
I'll be there.
And, of course, Stan will be at the game, Elmwood Brimfield.
Prairieland Blue title on the line.
That's right.
And Steve Stein will be at...
Steve Stein, the ubiquitous Pekin reporter, Steve Stein will be at Metamorphic Pekin.
Okay. Well, that wraps up our preview to Week 7. For Wes Huett, sports editor, small school football beat writer Stan Morris. I'm Adam Duvall, your host. Bye for now.